it's cold. When it's super cold out in the wintertime, we're waiting for this to defrost here. I like to keep my four-wheel drive and my lockers on before I park the car, because it is too frozen for the stuff to engage once you, if you try to do it afterwards. Hey guys, Rex here. Thought I would share a few tips or standard operating procedures or things that a guy does every day that a guy forgets about with vehicles in extreme cold weather. I guess I was raised up here, mostly. So extreme cold weather is just something that's normal. And sometimes I forget that maybe that's not everyone's experience. So I just thought I'd share with you some things just off the top of my head. I do not have a list written. I mean, these are so standard of operating procedures, they're not even written down. It's just normal stuff a guy does and when it's really, really cold. So first off, vehicles, man, if it's cold, you got to keep them plugged in. So like you got a block heater, right? That'll save a lot of wear and tear. It's not just to start the vehicle. I've had times where I didn't plug in vehicles and it was very cold. I had an old 83 4x4 pickup one time. And it had 425,000 miles on that one. And I finally blew out the rear main seal because we had started it up in the morning and there was no block heater, or the block heater was not plugged in. I thought, oh, it starts without that. It's fine. Because it would start no matter how cold it was. That old 22R Toyota engine, I had put a Weber carburetor on there. So it was very reliable. It would start. So it's not just about starting it, because what happens is everything gets real cold. And if everything gets real cold, your soft plugs will blow out. They're the little soft plugs on your engine block that keep the water in there. And if they get froze, they'll blow out instead of blow up, hydraulically, everything else in the engine. I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know how all this works. Your oil pressure will be goofy, or there's a lot of stuff that happens when it gets real cold. But I've blown out the engine seals because I didn't turn off. Like one time I started up the Toyota. I don't know if you can handle the sound effects. Go out there and it's so freaking cold when it's 35 below. That's not wind chill. That's 35 below Fahrenheit, no wind chill. You know what I mean? So it's like 70 or 80 below with wind chill. And you go out there and just to open the door, everything on the vehicle, there's no flex. There's no springs anymore. Everything's like a solid block of iron. Frozen iron. So you get the door open, you climb up in. The seats are like a solid block of ice. There's no spring to them. There's no give. The vehicle doesn't kind of go like this. It's very strange. So you get in the car and you sit on it and you're like, okay. And you need gloves to grab the steering wheel. And you get the key in there. And if you can get the key, just getting the key in there is ridiculous sometimes. It's like, okay, you got to work your way into there. Kind of, all right, Jimmy, all right, now she's loose. And you can see the light kind of, because when batteries get cold, they lose some juice too. So, and then you kind of turn it over. And then I remember and I mean, I've done this so many times. I've had a lot of old vehicles in extreme cold weather. It's like, wow, 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 bruh, 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 bruh. And then you sit there and kind of baby the accelerator until it's running like on more than 2 cylinders. And as soon as okay, I can let it run and it'll warm up. And you go back inside and come back out and you peek. And okay, now it's running on all 4 cylinders, like in that case, or 8. I've blown up all different kinds of engines because of cold weather issues. And this is how I learned it, And go back out there and she's running like a top. Okay, here we go. Oh, there's like all the oil is under the car. What the hell happened? Well, obviously, it didn't like being started that cold. So a block heater is not just to get it started. It's to prevent stuff from blowing up when it does start. So use the block heater, man. If you got one and it's really cold, it's very hard on stuff. Short of blowing it up, it's very hard on stuff. not to have it like semi-warm. Another thing, the standard operating procedure up here, and this might be in some parts of the world, man, maybe you couldn't get away with this, but you have to leave the car run. You have to leave the car run when you like stop at the grocery store, you stop at the gas station, you're filling gas. I know there's things that say you can't run it when you're... Everyone leaves the car run while they're filling gasoline and diesel. Like, guys can preach about safety. I'm just telling you the reality. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is so cold. If you turn it off, like, you're going to have a hell of a time starting it in a lot of cases. Plus, I mean, just like the wear and tear on the vehicle is terrible. So should a guy turn off the car when you're filling gas? Yes, you should. Do people up here where it's that damn cold? No. I don't remember seeing it ever in the wintertime where someone turns off the car to go and do that, right? Another thing you're going to see up here is if you have a place where you work, like the wife works at, a certain place or whatever, and you park in the driveway, and they have plug-ins for all the cars. So you bring your extension cord and you plug in your block heater at the little deal at work. I mean, just from parking there for a couple hours. So that's a real thing. So that's one of the first things that comes to mind. Another one is obviously keeping the vehicle maintained, right? I got some old vehicles or some vehicles with high miles, and all kinds of lights start to come on when it's that cold, very cold, right? So you'll have like a lot of your sensors and a lot of your stuff is not at the viscosity or whatever. Like there's the connectivity of whatever's being measured there, because there's a whole variety of different things that your diagnostics is trying to figure out will all display in an engine light, which I hate that. I just prefer gauges. Like I need my temperature gauge, my old oil pressure gauge, RPMs, how's my electricity doing? And I got a pretty good idea if the car is okay, right? But a lot of those lights will just come on and when it's super cold. So it's good. I like to keep the vehicle very well maintained. And I was highly mechanical hobby guy for a bunch of years. I, rebuild small blocks and Ford and Chevy small block, like race cars and stuff like that, and big monster truck type deals back in the day. But like, I will absolutely take it to the mechanic, because I'm telling you, if you're an expert in any field, you know what it takes to be an expert in your field. You should be able to recognize that maybe that's the case in the field of automobiles, which I'm sure it is. So I take it to a mechanic and I'm like, hey man, I live in the middle of nowhere. I don't want to die because the vehicle died. Check everything. Like, this needs to be reliable. I do not want anything to break down. Like, I don't want my wheels to fall off. I don't want the vehicle to stop. I don't need it to not start, etc. Right? And they go through and they come through with a list. Anything that's even like semi-critical or is looking like it's starting to get tired, I will replace. It's worth the money to me to not have to crawl under the car when it's 70 below wind chill, trying to figure out what the hell's going on, which I've done a lot of as a kid. So that's one thing too. Another thing you can do in extreme cold weather up here that we all do. I mean, everyone keeps winter survival kits in the car, like a pretty robust one. My father taught that to us. He had his old Army gear from when he was doing extreme cold weather stuff in the Army. And it's like some really good stuff. Like I remember as a kid, like when it get really cold, he had to use that a few times because the vehicle would not be able to go, or got stuck or whatever, or broke down in the cold weather just from being too cold. It just quit, right? Like in that movie where the helicopter just freezes solid in the air and crashes. That stuff will happen on cars too. But he'd have the full face. So when I'm talking an extreme cold weather kit, full face mask with goggles. And this is before they had cell phones, in case he had to walk a few miles to the nearest farm, because people were not going to get out there in a week or two. In some places, if you're on the wrong road, they won't be out there in a month. So if you do not get out by walking, you are dead in the old days, right? And so he'd had a full face mask, the goggles, the Poly Pros, the, what do they call them? The NB2? I can't remember what they're called. It's the big Eskimo looking, Army issue coat, the overpants, the huge Mickey Mouse boots with the, all the weird stuff that those guys would wear. And so I inherited a lot of those deals too, to have the Sorel boot packs, or the, what's the ones that I use now? Baffin, the Bath and Arctic boots. I always keep those in the car to where I can reach them. Because, man, I already got bad circulation on my feet since I had a lot of frostbite in the day. And so those things are very warm. Like you're not going to have cold feet. You might die of freezing, but your feet will be warm with the Bath and Arctic boots. And I think they're the Polar Arctic Extreme. They're the real warm ones. So having an extreme, serious duty, always in the car, always a standard operating procedure, plus an extra set of gloves and hats and scarves up front, where, if you need to get out and change a tire or do something else, all that. Wool blankets we always keep in the car, a couple candles. When I worked industry jobs in this area before, they had lists, a checklist. I should find that checklist and put it on here. But it was like the government issue checklist of what you need in your car to like do your job. And you have the aluminum, I think Saul mentioned this in one of his recent posts, the aluminum grain scoop shovels was on that list, an issued list to us at work, so you can scoop under the car, because it's like good enough to get the heavy, compacted, wind-packed snow. Those big, like normal shovels are meant for fluffy snow, but a grain scoop holds some weight. So a grain scoop shovel plus a normal shovel as well, like a square front shovel. You'd have a normal one of those to get underneath a vehicle, to get under the axles, if you get hung up on snow that way. So like 2 shovels, of course, a quality set of jumper cables with enough length to them to where you can get if your car's in a goofy position, because a lot of times the short ones won't reach. So a good quality. You spend like $100 on jumper cables. Extreme cold weather sleeping bag was standard kit. I'm trying to remember what was a candle was part of the kit, a flashlight, all that kind of stuff, right? Socks, extra socks like wool socks. So all your winter survival kit stuff is standard as well. Another standard operating procedure for extreme cold weather. This is what is this? Pedialyte, because I got the norovirus. The whole family's got the norovirus, so we're snowed in and quarantined anyways, man. Terrible stomach ache. Look at this. And the wife just delivered me some chicken noodle soup. You want to see this? Oh, that's gonna be good. Homemade chicken noodle soup. And she has the norovirus worse than I do now. Or whatever it is. It's terrible though. It's like really bad one. So what else do we do for extreme cold weather? Yeah, I keep MREs in the car because you can heat them with the heating packs chemically without burning yourself in half, right? And I mean, like, they're kind of designed for that, so I keep MREs in the car. And some guys like to keep Gatorade or Pedialyte or Propel in the car because it doesn't freeze in cold weather. It'll freeze absolutely solid up here. I mean, like, when it gets really cold, doesn't matter if it's Gatorade up here, man. It's freaking solid. And then when it melts, it's like just the nasty part first and then the real sugary stuff next, or the electrolytes all come, it separates out when it freezes, so that when you drink it, it's kind of, but it will freeze slower than normal water. So it is a good idea to keep stuff with high electrolytes in it anyways, for like if you're going to keep drinking water in the car, which you probably a good idea, man. Also, I'll keep radios in the car. I don't think that's normal standard operating procedure for most people around here anymore. I know farmers and ranchers will keep FRS radios in the vehicles, so they can have a second means of radio communications in addition to their phones. But one thing I'll do in the driveways, and I showed you that in the beginning of this video, is before I roll into the yard, and this would even be true when I lived in town, if there's bad weather coming, like today, there's a blizzard blowing in. Hopefully this uploads. Should keep us hunkered down for a few days. Supposedly the blizzard's supposed to keep us stuck here. But I will turn on the 4-wheel drive and the locker and get everything locked into place before I park the car. Number one, if you're buried in snow and you're trying to get it out and you turn on the four-wheel drive and you can't move, now you're revving the engine and moving slow to try to get unstuck, and the four-wheel drive was still trying to lock in. And if it does lock in, it's very hard on stuff. Ask me how I know. I've blown the differentials out of Dodge pickups and all kinds of stuff. Ask me how I know. I only know about this because I did it the wrong way. I'm telling you. I'm not saying it's I'm hard-earned. I mean, this video is worth tens of thousands of dollars at least. And if you don't die, then it's worth billions of dollars, right? But you absolutely need to keep your four-wheel drive and your lockers and everything turned on, even if you're not sure, because you can always turn them off once you start rolling, man. I keep them locked on. That way, when I start the vehicle, I go out there and I have to get out of the snow. Well, why don't you shovel, Rex? Well, what if... There's like a million things where you might need to get out of the driveway in an emergency, right? So even without perfectly shoveled or, get the snowblower. What if you have to find the snowblower? Keep it in the house. No. But you keep the vehicle basically in four-wheel drive and all locked in before you park it. And I always park it, and it's very common anyways. Most people who work oil industry and stuff know from H2S gas threats and like stuff where you have to leave site in 1 minute or you die. Like you have to hold your breath, run to your car, and floor it. That's their standard operating procedure. They'll know to keep their vehicle pointed away from the danger. So most guys up here, you'll notice at stores, they'll back in. A parking spot where they stop at the store, like, most people nose in there, they'll back in to the spot so they can escape just because it's this burnt into their brain. That's very common up here because of oil fields and other industries like that where guys are used to parking like that. And it just becomes standard practice. Like when they park in their driveway at home, they back into their driveway so the nose is pointed out. And if you have to leave in a hurry, wham, you don't have to back up, right? So do your backing up while it's easy for you to be careful, right? Because you're going to have to back up one way or the other if you park up against a house or in a garage or something, right? So they back in so they can get out quick. So like when I parked in here after I got this Pedialyte from the store right here in my little wine glass, I turn on my four-wheel drive, my lockers, and I backed up to the door. And then I also turned the heater all the way up and the blower all the way up and the seat warmer on. Nope, I left the seat warmer off. I'm trying to remember, because I have this thing, you don't even think about it, you just do it, right? And then I back in and then I plug it in before I come in the house. That way, if my radio starter works, which sometimes it's really cold, it doesn't, it'll warm up before I get out there, right? But also then I can drive out and it's plugged in. So those are just a few things that a guy can do for extreme cold weather. The type of gasoline for a petrol engine you use is very important too for hydrocavitation. If you run ethanol, chemically, it's actually the same as, very, very much the same as running heat. They sell those little red bottles of stuff they call heat. So the water in your gas, so it keeps your gas lines free of frozen water. If you're running ethanol, corn ethanol in your fuel, that's already kind of done. It's already in the fuel, chemically. So it's not as bad. However, because it displaces water, there's still a certain amount of hydration in that can't get out of the fuel now. It's an organic chemistry thing. You can whiteboard it out or whatever. Maybe I'll do that sometime. But there's actually still water in the fuel. It's just freed up. You know what I mean? And so you'll have hydrocavitation if you don't use certain kind, like real good fuel. Or when I say fuel, I mean petrol or diesel. If you're running diesel fuel, that's probably more proper, right? And then likewise with my diesel, well, when it's real cold, I'll run half and half, which means like 50% of my gas is number one diesel, which is real nasty, but it's very, very good for cold weather, or it's number two. And a lot of old guys around here as well, before they had fancy diesel that was, number one diesel that was, number one runs like hell, and it's very hard on the engine, and the lubricity is terrible, but it runs when it's cold. So you don't want to use it unless you have to, right? But it's very reliable if it's critical that it starts and doesn't gel up on you. But what a lot of old guys used to do, and they still do in a lot of industries around here, farmers, oil field workers, is they'll pour a little bit of gasoline into their diesel to keep it, to do that as well. And I'm not saying to do that. Let me know in the comments below your experience with all the things we're talking here. This is an open discussion in the topic of extreme cold weather vehicle stuff, okay? Anything we're talking about here, just be respectful, be cool, man. It's my only rule for this one. The task here is to have a free discussion on extreme cold weather vehicle stuff, but be cool with each other, okay? Don't be a jerk, okay? And we'll enjoy it. So looking forward to what you have to say. All right, stay cozy. Rex out. And my tobacco was thawing out. It was a solid block a second ago, but it is starting to warm up now. Rex, your engine light is on. Yeah, I know, man. This thing's got a lot of miles on it. It's got all kinds of lights on. I maintain it quite a bit. Some of those are benign. Like I change the exhaust. And so to try to fix that, this thing's getting sort of tired. I like to drive my vehicles into the ground. This one's almost 250,000 on this one. Works good so far. Mechanically, it's tip-top. Every time I have the oil change, they have them do a full diagnostic and fix anything that's even wearing out a little bit. But so let's see if this sucker will go into freaking... See my lights. Oh, I have no park light. Right now I'm in reverse to see if she'll break free. Sometimes it's frozen in gear. Sometimes a little vacuum drive. There's a lot of weird stuff in some of these vehicles that you wouldn't understand until it's really cold. Okay, so it's not one the vehicle is frozen to the ground. Hold on, ease into it. Oh, she's breaking loose. All right, the vehicle was froze to the ground, and I got a ways I can back up before I hit anything here. Just thought I'd share that with you. And I'm going to concentrate on driving now.
If you're looking for rugged precision in your long-range optics, check out Arcan Optics. They still have a deal going on the SH4 Generation 2 scopes. I use these on everything from 50s down to 22 rifles. They're excellent scopes. Very, very rugged, very precise. They have all the features. Check them out. I will leave a link below. Save $170 if you include the combo pack or use the link to support the channel.